Welcome to the Agape Lifecast Weekly Wrap-Up. Discover how global events align with God's Word. Join us and be prepared for what's ahead, and let's talk about life. Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome to the Agape Lifecast Weekly Wrap-Up. I am your host, Nelson Lee. Thanks for joining us. And here at the Weekly Wrap-Up, we're going to look at the week's top stories from a biblical perspective. And one thing we'll guarantee is that we're not going to look at the news from a biased perspective, except for through the bias of God's Word. So this is the weekly wrap-up for the week of August the 9th, 2024. And we're going to take a look at national news first, and then we'll take a look at world news. So as many of you know, especially in the Southeast, we've been dealing with Tropical Storm Debbie. Debbie has risen, the death toll from Debbie has risen to at least 6 after it made a second landfall in South Carolina. And a tornado in Lacoma, North Carolina, killed a man and caused significant damage. And after hitting Florida as a Category 1 hurricane, Debbie has dumped over a foot of rain across multiple states. Matter of fact, we actually got almost an inch here in Roan Mountain, Tennessee. And lowered our temperatures quite a bit. Had a high yesterday in the upper 60s to near 70 here in Roan Mountain, Tennessee. It was dreary this morning, but the sun is out now as Debbie is continuing to move off up towards New England. The storm has produced 11 tornadoes, prompted flash flood emergencies in North Carolina and down into Florida. Debbie is now just an extratropical low and is moving rapidly towards the northeast, bringing heavy rain and flash flooding up in that area. So the wait is over. Kamala Harris has selected Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate, citing his dedication to the middle-class families and extensive political and military experience. Walz has been praised for his bipartisan efforts and effective communication styles, and has a background that includes serving in the National Guard and working as a teacher. He has been instrumental in passing legislation in Minnesota, such as universal background checks for gun purchases and for abortion rights. Harris and Walz aim to unify a Democratic Party that has been split as they try to defeat Donald Trump this fall, and with endorsements from prominent figures like Barack Obama and Joe Biden, he is seen as a safe pick to try to unify the Democratic Party. And kind of solidify their base, and it's also kind of like the J.D. Vance pick for Donald Trump to kind of solidify the Republican base. So, allies of Trump have criticized Governor Tim Walz's handling of the George Floyd protests after Harris named him as a running mate. However, in a phone call to Governor Walz, Trump praised him and his handling of the situation, saying he's an excellent guy. You got a big National Guard out there that's ready to come in and fight like hell. And I tell you, they're the best. What they did in Minneapolis was incredible. They went in and dominated, and it happened immediately. So Walz has faced accusations of delaying the National Guard's deployment, causing damage. Walz, who was a National Guardsman and a veteran, mobilized over 7,000 guardsmen in 18 hours after Mayor Frey's request. Reports highlighted miscommunication between Walz and Frey, and Walz has defended his actions, citing the time needed to mobilize the Guard. On a personal note here, having been a member of the National Guard myself, I can tell you that most National Guard units have a mobilization time, a MOB report time of 72 hours, 3 days. That's on their shorts, what we call our short statement, our doc statement, not 18 hours. And many of these frontline units, these policing units, have a report mandated time by law of about 24 hours. And if you can get it done prior to that, that's pretty exceptional. So Donald Trump has, in his Mar-a-Lago press conference yesterday, has agreed to debate Harris on ABC on September 10th after initially resisting. He proposed 2 additional debates, one on Fox News on September 4th and another on NBC on September 25th. Both Trump and Harris confirmed their participation in the ABC debate, which will be held in Philadelphia, moderated by David Muir and Lindsey Davis, likely without a live audience. A Harris campaign official rejected the Fox debate and stated future debates depend on Trump's participation on the September 10th debate. CBS is also planning a vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. Jenna Ellis, an ex-Trump lawyer involved in Donald Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election, has agreed to cooperate with prosecutors as part of a plea deal. Ellis was part of Rudy Giuliani's elite strike force team, was charged with fraud, forgery, and conspiracy in Arizona's electors scheme, alongside 17 others, including Giuliani and Mark Meadows. She has already pleaded guilty to similar charges in Georgia. In Arizona, Lorraine Pellegrino, one of 11 Republicans who tried to certify an alternate slate of electors for Trump's victory, also pleaded guilty. Court documents show that Arizona's grand jurors considered indicting Trump, but were advised against it due to potential conflicts with his federal cases. Ellis's cooperation is likely to be pivotal in ongoing investigations. Hawaiian Electric of Maui County and others will pay $4 billion to settle claims related to last year's fire that killed 102 people and destroyed Lahaina. Hawaiian Electric's $2 billion share reflects its alleged failure to maintain power lines and prevent the fire. Maui County was also criticized for its response. The settlement covers around 10,000 plaintiffs, though how the funds will be distributed remains unclear. Attorney Lake Lowenthal said that the settlement won't fully restore Maui. Representative Cori Bush, a member of the Progressive Squad in Congress, was defeated by Wesley Bell, a prosecutor, in a primary race heavily targeted by the pro-Israeli group AIPAC. Bush's outspoken criticism of Israel's actions in Gaza, which she termed an ethnic cleansing campaign, and her refusal to condemn Hamas as a terrorist organization drew significant attention from pro-Israeli groups, and these groups spent around $15 million to unseat her, portraying her as out of touch with local concerns. Bush's loss mirrors that of Representative Jamal Bowman in New York, another AIPAC target. Bell, running as a moderate, criticized Bush's stance on Israel as lacking an understanding of the issue's complexities. Multiple secretaries of state have urged Elon Musk to address false information shared on X's AI chat box Grok, which inaccurately suggested that Kamala Harris's ineligibility for the 2024 ballot box, as that has spread and other false information has been allowed to spread on Twitter. This has been led by Minnesota's Secretary of State, Steve Simon, and they have criticized Grok for spreading other similar misinformation about ballot deadlines and other things. The letter highlights concerns about the AI-driven election misinformation as we approach the November 2024 election. And since Elon Musk has taken over Twitter, it has become a hotbed of disinformation and Russian bot farm activity. Federal prosecutors allege that Saif Raza Merchant, a Pakistani man, attempted to hire hitman to assassinate American political figures. Merchant, who is 46, was arrested on July 12th, just before Donald Trump was wounded at the Pennsylvania rally. The FBI had been investigating him, though his case's connection to the reported Iranian threat against Trump remains unclear. Merchant discussed killing those hurting Pakistan and the Muslim world, with FBI agents posing as the hitmen. He used code words related to his textile business to communicate plans, but did not directly disclose specific targets. The investigation is ongoing. The Biden administration has mobilized military and diplomatic assets in response to Iran's threats of retaliation for Israeli strikes that have killed key leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas. Iran's foreign minister warned of decisive responses, and Hezbollah has vowed attacks, prompting the U.S. to dispatch fighter jets and naval forces to the region. President Biden and Secretary of State Blinken have engaged Middle Eastern allies to de-escalate the tensions. Though Iranian-backed militias have already struck a U.S. base in Iraq. Hamas named Yahya Sinwar as its new leader, while Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu declared that a multi-front war against Iran was underway. Despite intense diplomatic efforts, the risk of a broader conflict remains significant. Hezbollah has stated that they are prepared to go it alone if Iran backs out of a strike in retaliation. Russia declared a federal level of emergency in the Kursk region after a major Ukrainian incursion, the largest attack on Russian soil by Kyiv since the war began. Russian reinforcements, including rocket launchers and tanks, have been sent to counter the offensive. Meanwhile, a Russian missile strike on a shopping mall in eastern Ukraine killed 10 people and injured 35. Ukrainian officials believe these attacks and incursions into Kyiv can help strengthen their negotiating power against Russia. Additionally, Ukraine continues to strike Russian territory with drones, targeting a military airfield in the Lipetsk region. The Institute for the Study of War reported rapid Ukrainian advances into Kursk, surprising Russian forces. And in this area, the Russian forces were basically made up of conscripts and not really Russians' first-line troops. And the situation remains highly volatile, with both sides intensifying their efforts. Sheikh Hasina, Bangladesh's long-serving prime minister, fled to India after mass student-led protests against the government escalated. The unrest began after a controversial quota system for public sector jobs and intensified after Hasina accused students of pro-Pakistan sympathies, leading to a violent crackdown that killed 400 people. The military refused further violence, and Hasina fled as protesters stormed her residence. Nobel economist Muhammad Yunus was appointed as transitional leader, and the controversial parliament was dissolved. Yunus praised the students, comparing their action to Bangladesh's 1971 liberation. New elections will be held under the transitional government. In science news, A new blood test for diagnosing Alzheimer's disease has shown to be more accurate than traditional cognitive tests and CT scans. The test measures the tau protein levels, a key indicator of the disease, and has identified Alzheimer's in patients with memory problems with 90% accuracy, outperforming dementia specialists at 73% and primary care doctors at 61%, according to the New York Times. While the study was conducted in Sweden and may not apply to all demographics, the test offers a faster and more affordable diagnostic option. It is currently useful only for those already showing memory problems and not for predicting future development. On a side note, there seems to be a direct link in increase to Alzheimer's and the change in our diets that occurred in the 1950s that we introduced certain processed foods into our diets in the Western world. Now, this is not medical advice, but research has also shown that if you want to help reduce your risk of the disease, if you want to help reduce your risk of Alzheimer's immediately, begin with diets in low in saturated fats and trans fats, which are commonly found in processed foods, such as certain vegetable oils like Crisco, canola oil, etc. And because those have been shown and proven to have a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's. The impact of antioxidants such as vitamin E found in nuts and seeds also show promise in slowing Alzheimer's progressions. Intermediate fasting and caloric restrictions are also emerging as potential strategies to help enhance brain function and reduce Alzheimer's risk by improving insulin sensitivities and reducing inflammation. So if you really want to help reduce your chances of getting Alzheimer's, cook with oils such as tallow, butter, high-grade olive oils, and avocado oils. Avoid any of these processed oils such as canola, vegetable oils, Crisco, and stuff like that. Go back to the way people used to cook with tallow, lard, olive oils, Mediterranean diet oils, and avocado oils. So do your research and let's get our minds healthy. So taking a look at the weather, again, as we talked about and have been talking about for the last few weeks, the tropics are starting to heat up. We have a system out in the eastern Atlantic with a 60% chance of development as it heads towards the islands. And as you can see there, Debbie up in northern Pennsylvania, southern New York, and moving on out of the picture. So taking a look at the tropics for the rest of the month, we have a lot of activity forecast to be a problem as we get towards maybe even the Gulf of Mexico, as we get into the Bahamas, maybe north of the islands, and then towards the latter part of the month, it looks like the tropics will really start to heat up as the Cape Verde season swings into action. We can see that system starting to get its act together there in the middle of Atlantic, eastern Atlantic, and these are the possible paths. The European has more of a northern track and maybe develop it into what we call a fish storm, maybe recurving it. And the GFS seems to want to bring it more towards the Big Islands. So taking a look at your weather for tomorrow, we have this cold front that's kind of dipped down pretty far south for this time of the year, actually sitting just north of the Houston area, but dipped down all the way into the deep south. And it's kind of lingering around by Sunday, causing some showers over the Central Plains and back into the Rockies. So looking at the watches and warnings for the area, a lot of area of heat warnings. It's been pretty hot, and talking to some friends in Texas, they've been dealing with their first 100-degree days for the season. I don't miss it. And looking over towards the southeast, and then there we can see our flash flood warnings and our flood watches and warnings up for the northeast with the areas associated with Debbie. And looking at chances of severe weather over again associated with Debbie, we have a slight chance of severe weather in eastern New York and eastern Pennsylvania and over towards New Jersey. So taking a look at highs for Saturday and Sunday, there you can see in Texas, we have the usual spots out there in eastern California and in the desert southwest. This is not unusual for this time of year. And then, of course, in Texas, you can see it's pretty hot. Again, not totally unheard of this time of year. Taking a look at sports, there's the medal count for the Olympics. China's leading the way with 32 golds. United States not far behind with 30 in the overall medal count. The United States leads with 104 individual and team medals. I found this interesting that two Olympians fell ill after swimming in the Seine River, and that led Belgium to withdraw from the mixed relay triathlon, and Switzerland to actually have to replace a swimmer. Paris and the Olympic Committee spent $1.5 billion to clean up this river. And as I did some research for this story, I found out that the Seine River had been prohibited. They had prohibited swimming for over 100 years in this river because of pollution. And then they spent over $1 billion on river cleanup. But because of the rains that had been going on prior to the Olympics, it once again caused an E. coli flare, and two Olympic swimmers, fell ill because of E. coli problems, and it has caused safety concerns for swimming in the river because of pollution. So taking a look at financial news, I hear online and I look online, this could also be a myth buster about how things are as terrible as they've ever been. It's never been this bad. And so I saw this as I was doing research. And this is called the Economic Confidence Index. And it is just simply a poll of Americans' assessments of the current economic conditions. It's basically a how do you feel poll. Well, if we go back just to 2008, 2009, and the same question was asked of the same people that are saying it's as bad as it is now, well, guess what? Back in that time, they were saying it was as bad as it ever was. And half the number of people right now are saying it is as bad as it ever was than were in 2008, 2009. So you can see that more people now, or less people now, are saying it is as bad as it ever was than were just in 2008, 2009. And this doesn't even go back to 1980, 1981, because I can remember back then, and it was bad. It was really bad. My dad was laid off. The oil fields were bust. Interest rates were 13%. They weren't 9%, 6%. They were 13%. Inflation was in the 20%. It was really bad. The first couple of years of Reagan's term were really bad as they tried to get the Carter malaise and inflation under control. So just remember, it can always be worse. And we actually had a lady that went to our church when we were in First Baptist Church Rocher, and she used to tell us stories about the Great Depression. It can always be worse. So, as many of you have probably paid attention to the stock market recently, they have tumbled in the past couple of weeks, even though they've fought their way back a little bit, and we'll look at that in the next couple of slides. Due to the fears of a U.S. recession, and new data is indicating that there is a slowdown in the U.S. economy, and that has triggered a global rout. And the European markets and the Japanese markets have suffered heavily. The Japanese Nikkei index has suffered its worst day since 1987, and the sell-off wiped out trillions of dollars in global markets. However, always want to point this out. Money is really never lost. It's just transferred. Because whenever somebody's selling and the market goes down, somebody's always buying. So I want to highlight this. I found this story interesting. The cost of insuring U.S. homes have surged 38% since 2019. Reaching an average of $2,478 annually. Now, those of you who live on the Gulf Coast, if you add your homeowners and your windstorm together, you would probably kill to be paying $2,478, especially those of you in Florida, with steeper increases in areas prone to climate disasters. In states like Florida and California, premiums have skyrocketed due to frequent hurricanes and wildfires, and many insurers are pulling out of high-risk regions. The trend is part of a broader crisis as insurers face escalating losses from climate-related disasters. And in 2022, home insurers in 18 states paid out more in claims than they received in premiums, leading to significant financial losses, rising home values, inflation, and increased rebuilding cost. And part of what I saw was that insurance companies are increasingly using drones, airplanes, and satellites to monitor properties, aiming to reduce the risk in their portfolios. These tools capture aerial photos that software analyzers use to hedge their risk and overhanging branches, looking for overhanging branches or mossy roofs or roof damage. And nationwide, this has recently helped them to drop consumers, such as Rosemary Riesler and her husband. And they used aerial images that incorrectly assessed her roof's condition. This surveillance trend is expected to grow, with daily updates possible by 2030, raising privacy concerns. So this is something that insurance companies are going to do to you and me to help reduce their bottom line. So taking a look at the markets. As of the time I updated this, the Dow Jones was pretty much even for the day. The S&P 500 was up slightly, and the NASDAQ was up almost 0.5%. And if we look at the volatility index is slowly climbing down, but it was up almost 50 points, and that was the highest spike that I had seen since COVID. And the volatility index, the VIX, just measures how skittish people are in the markets. So taking a look at entertainment news, 3 upcoming Taylor Swift concerts in Vienna were canceled after Austrian authorities arrested 2 suspected extremists, one of whom allegedly planned attacks on large-scale events, including Taylor Swift's sold-out shows. The organizer, Barracuda Music, announced the cancellation for safety concerns impacting 170,000 expected attendees. And the Austrian Chancellor, Karl Nehammer, expressed disappointment but noted the potential for tragedy was prevented. The suspect was a 19-year-old Austrian citizen, and he had pledged his allegiance to ISIS, and chemical substances were found at his home. And ticket holders will receive funds, but no replacement concerts have been announced. So one of the things I saw was that they had planned, these guys had planned on using cars to plow into the concert and then jump out with knife and machete attacks. That's one of the things that I had seen. So, as I've told you, I always want to close with the scripture, and it's Philippians 1:8. And finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And that is Philippians 4:8. And we live in a crazy, crazy world. And it seems like every day now we watch TV like this. You want to watch the stock market, you want to watch the hurricane update, or do you want to watch the Middle East update? And this is what it seems like. It seems like everything we watch and everything we turn on is going to make us lose our minds. But it has been proven that to release anxiety, that if you give praise and if you have gratitude, that you will release that anxiety and you will relieve that stress. So I invite you again to join us for the Agape Lifecast, and it's going to be most Fridays between 3 and 4. And again, if you have a story for us, send it to news@Agape Home Fellowship International, news@ahf-i.com. And we just want to thank you for joining us. That's the weekly wrap-up. We appreciate you being with us. We'll see you next Friday. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. We, like everyone else, are a slave to the algorithm. We can't do anything without the algorithm. You are a part of that. So if you haven't yet, hit the like button, and we would really appreciate it. So we hope you have a fantastic weekend. Again, we thank you for being with us, and may God richly bless you.